So this was just him on his walk. So he just has a picture of himself. So he just talks about how he was doing his walk. And this was in Highland. So I'm familiar with Highland. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Highland. So to me, I'm like, oh, I actually do know this area. So that is something to think about. It is in a nice area, actually. So he just talks about where he was at. And then he talks about the peace being shattered. So he says, out of nowhere, a white male driving eastbound. And I will say later on, he clarified that this was not a teenager. Okay, so I think that is important because I think a lot of, even like my husband was saying, he's like, it was probably just some stupid teenagers, right? Even then, it's not acceptable, period, anyways. But this is what they yelled. This is one that I am definitely like, I sat with this. My granddaughter is part African American, so to me, I was imagining somebody saying this to her, which is crazy to me that this is something we would say. So of course, he's just talking about how this impacted him, right? He was startled, trying to figure out why somebody was saying this. But this is interesting. He says, but honestly, I wasn't surprised. He says, I live in Highland, Utah, an area where roughly 95% of the population are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When my family first moved here, people told us it was a safe place to live. But what does that word actually mean if you aren't white, a Latter-day Saint, or politically conservative? All really good questions. What does it mean to be safe? And I do think that's interesting. I love these quotes that he uses because I think these really pinpoint how much our own theology, how much our leaders have taught us about this. So this is from President Dallin H. Oaks. In public actions and in our personal attitudes, we have had racism and related grievances. So again, like he's acknowledging this, right? Which I love because I'm like, oh, we actually have acknowledged this, that we have done this. In a persuasive personal essay, the Reverend Teresa A. Deer of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People has reminded us that racism thrives on hatred, oppression, collusion. Like to me, some of these words were like, so like I think we tend to think, oh, I don't hate people. I'm not trying to oppress people, but collusion. How are we colluding in this? Passivity, definitely. I think passivity, indifference for sure, and silence for sure. As citizens and as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we must do better to help root out racism. So some other good ones. Oh, he just went this because this is what hit me too, right? Racism thrives on hatred, oppression, collusion, passivity, indifference, and silence. And I think these ones, like I said, these are the big ones that I think we see: passivity, indifference, and silence, for sure. If we remain passive, indifferent, or silent about what just happened to me and what continues to happen to many people of color across Utah and the United States, then you are complicit. It breaks my heart, though it does not surprise me, that I live in an area where this vile attitude still exists. And then President Russell M. Nelson to call upon our members everywhere to lead out in abandoning attitudes and actions of prejudice. I plead with you to promote respect for all of God's children. We cannot claim to be safe or Christian community while allowing this behavior to go unchecked. This is just some information, about lynchings. And he actually goes on to talk about lynchings a little bit more. And I don't know if it's here or later. So he has some information about lynchings.
It's here. 70.
This is here. Document more than 70 modern day lynchings. And I know I've told people within my own community, I don't know, it's hard to say. And I think some of us will point to suicide because I think that's often what happens. They'll say it's suicide. And that's what happened in my community. And throughout this presentation, this is the first time he says this, but he'll say it a couple other times. Once again, some of your Black sisters and brothers are hoping you will raise your voice to root out racism and prejudice. Okay, so this is the first time he says it, but he says it a couple other times. So that was his first Facebook share. Then he shared a couple other things. So this was his second one, still more thoughts about it. So this was the day after. And he actually got up and he shared, I'm guessing it was during testimony meeting, his thoughts about this too, and he recorded it and posted it. So this is where he clarifies that this was a white man. Okay, so this wasn't who deliberately looked at me and threatened my life. So this wasn't just a stupid teenager, even though that is still stupid. And I would say it's even more like this shouldn't be something that's happening at all. How we use our agency matters. For those who have used their agency to create an environment where people feel emboldened to scream these vile threats, you are complicit. You used your agency to vote for this type of community, and your silence and choices continue to uphold it. Again, I think he points to your silence, right? This is a deliberate act of hatred. And I love this. He pulls out these scriptures, of course. Then if your hearts have been hardened, yea, if we have hardened our hearts against the word, insomuch that it has not been found in us, then will our state be awful, for then we shall be condemned. For our words will condemn us, yea, all our works will condemn us. We shall not be found spotless, and our thoughts will also condemn us. And in this awful state, we shall not dare to look up to our God. And we would fain be glad if we could command the rocks and the mountains to fall upon us to hide us from his presence. Just something to sit with. As I was walking on Sunday, I came across this sign in light of what he just experienced. On Saturday, the warning suddenly took on new and deeply personal meaning. So use the trail at your own risk with caution. This morning, I officially reported this hate crime, the threat to his life. A case number has been created and an investigation is underway. I hope they take this seriously. So he's now carrying a body cam. That's sad to me that he feels like he has to do that. Again, we cannot claim to be a safe or Christian community while allowing this behavior to go unchecked. And again, this is the second time he says it. He says it again even. So here, the second time, once again, some of your Black sisters and brothers are hoping you will raise your voice to root out racism and prejudice. Okay, then he gives a brief history of lynching. So this is hard to hear. I think the first time I really internalized it, really felt the sadness and deep sorrow of lynching was when I read about it, and it was a historical talking about history of some of this kinds of things happening, and it was particularly to a woman who was pregnant. And so not only was her life lost in this, but the child was, and part of it had to do with her being pregnant. I think there was some issues with that in terms of what they thought did or didn't happen. So lynching as racial terror exploded after the Civil War. Between 1877 and 1950, more than 4,400 Black Americans were lynched in the United States, most in the South, peaking from the 1890s to the 1920s, as Jim Crow laws stripped away rights while during Reconstruction. More than 4,400 Black Americans were lynched in the United States, most in the South, peaking from the 1890s to the 1920s. So it was kind of the same thing there. Congress failed to act for over a century. Roughly 200 anti-lynching bills died in the Senate before the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act finally passed in 2022. What? That just barely passed. Oh my gosh, so I'm just now reading through this 67 years later. Jeez. Okay. Why it still matters. It shaped modern policing, sentencing, and the death penalty. It drove the Great Migration. 6 million Black Americans fled the South. It hasn't fully ended, as he reported, right? In 2026, documented 70 plus suspected modern day lynchings across the South since 2000, most initially ruled suicides. That's what I was saying. Like, that's what I'm seeing is that there are ruled suicides. Again.
Allegedly.
What's that?
Allegedly.
Yes, yeah. And I haven't looked into these reports or anything. So, like, I don't know, but I also feel like we should take this seriously. Like, given the history in our country, we should take these seriously. It wasn't just hanging. Lynchings often involved torture, mutilation, and burning. They were public events, announced in advance, attended by crowds, photographed, and turned into souvenir postcards. It's just, ugh. This wasn't random violence, it was a system. lynching enforced who could vote, own property, earn fair wages, or even look a white person in the eye. About a third of victims were falsely accused. Many were never accused of anything at all. Again, he says this again, some of your Black sisters and brothers were hoping you will raise your voice to root out racism and prejudice. So that was the end of his presentation. I think this is heavy. So
Very
I don't,
heavy.
very heavy. And I don't think it's wrong to sit in silence for this moment, for the moment that we've come to, that this is happening, that this is acceptable in our country. So.